XIII is a first-person shooter, developed by Southend Interactive, published by Ubisoft, and released near the end of 2003. The release came during a purple patch for the publisher, at the end of a 12-month period which saw the release of, amongst many others, Tom Clancy's Splinter Cell, Beyond Good and Evil, Prince of Persia: Sands of Time, and Tom Clancy's Rainbow Six III. Based on the Belgian comic of the same name, the game takes a cel-shaded approach to graphics in order to more properly convey the source medium's style. The early 2000s were a rich time for cel-shaded games, having been pioneered by the wonderful Jet Set Radio in 2000, incidentally one of the 3 best reasons to own a Dreamcast, and built on by many more, including The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker and Beautiful Joe, the latter really going all in on using the style to provide a comic book feel. Cel shading is far from the only nod to graphic novels that XIII makes. You'll instantly notice that enemies' movements and actions are accompanied by the classic visual sound effects, including the genius tap-tap of footsteps that alert you to an enemy whose presence is out of the line of sight, and they even change in size in relation to the enemy's proximity. XIII relays any in-mission developments and happenings through the use of side panels that are overlaid onto your view. These do a fantastic job of keeping the pace up and keeping you immersed in the action, and are a far better way of relaying in-world events to you than taking your control away and forcing you to watch lengthy cutscenes. RPGs, I'm looking at you. A satisfying, if rather gruesome, extension to this side panel style is apparent any time you hit a headshot on an unsuspecting enemy. You're treated to a sequence of close-ups of the grisly fate of the mook, with an impressive range of results that vary based on the exact point of impact of your shot. Taken all together, the stylistic choices made do one of the best jobs I've ever seen in a game of conveying a consistent and engaging tone. I love when games choose to have their own distinct visual feel, rather than just be photorealistic, and XIII totally knocks it out of the park in this regard. The narrative of XIII is densely woven, and for the most part tells an engaging tale. The game opens with the assassination of American President William Sheridan by Sniper, very much visually invoking the JFK assassination. Sometime later, you wash up on a New York beach, suffering with amnesia, and with just a tattoo of the Roman numerals for 13 as identification. Almost immediately, you're set upon by the henchmen of the Mongoose, a suspicious figure in a beige trench coat. After surviving a couple of frenetic firefights, you're accosted by the FBI, who arrest you for the murder of President Sheridan. The evidence seems watertight. You exactly match the description of a military captain named Steve Rowland, and Rowland exactly matches the description of the lone gunman. But all is very much not as it seems, not least that Rowland seemingly died while on operation 2 years ago. As events unfold, you discover that the assassination was part of a wider conspiracy instigated by the mysterious organisation the 20, which consists of 20 shadowy figures, all with numeral tattoos, and with seemingly limitless influence. You're tasked with unmasking and eliminating the 20 before their scheme to seize ultimate power can bear fruit, all while staying out of the clutches of the Mongoose. I did find the twists and turns somewhat difficult to keep up with, if I'm honest, and I'm still piecing together some of the finer details days after completion, although perhaps that's not a bad thing. I also found the reveal of number 1 to be disappointing, and it felt like a lazy piece of writing, honestly, using a twist for the shock value without considerations for the preceding narrative. Aside from those criticisms, though, I did find the story to be gripping, and it did keep me consistently hooked and playing just one more level to find out what happens next, so I'd still give it a thumbs up. As far as the gameplay is concerned, much of it plays out the way you'd expect from an FPS of the early 2000s, at a time before the influence of Halo was widely felt. And so there's not too much to say about the core mechanics. What does set XIII apart from many of its contemporaries is a healthy focus on stealth. The game is divided up for the most part into a handful of distinct locations, and your time at each will often be spread over several levels. More often than not, the first level will entail a covert infiltration, sometimes with a no-kill or a no-alarms requirement. It's here where the unique melee combat comes to the fore. You can grab one of any number of everyday objects strewn around the level, then sneak upon an enemy minding their own business and smash them in the back of the head for a silent, non-lethal takedown. I'm a huge fan of stealth games, and so this stuff was right up my alley. Getting the drop on a guard and taking them out with a broom or an ashtray or whatever I could find to hand felt fantastic, and on the occasions I got to pick up a solid wooden chair and annihilate them with that, you couldn't wipe the grin off my face. It's also a nice change of pace from continual run-and-gun action, level after level. That said, I did find the implementation of the stealth features to be a bit hit or miss. Too often I would get spotted and be forced into gunning guards down anyway, and that often seemed to work out just as well. And sometimes I would fail to avoid detection or to successfully hide bodies for no clear reason. But the illusion was maintained well enough for me to have plenty of fun with it. There are a couple of other features you don't see in many FPS games, which are the grappling hook and the ability to take hostages. They aren't heavily relied upon, and are sometimes a little bit clunky, but overall they're nice little features that add a richness to the experience, and make you feel like more of a fugitive secret agent than a marine, which fits in nicely with the rest of the aesthetic. The soundtrack also deserves a special mention, as it's absolutely fantastic and I can't say enough good things about it. For the lack of better descriptors, I'd call it spy jazz. If you've ever seen the TV series Archer, think of the opening and closing credits and you're not far off. In fact, if Archer were ever to be adapted to a video game, I think the creators should definitely look at 13 in whole as a rough blueprint. Each of the music tracks has both a moody and an energetic variation, and the game live mixes between them very effectively, depending on whether you're in direct combat or not. The tracks feature an array of strings, horns, synths, keys and bass, and they're all underpinned by truly incredible acoustic drums, which run the gamut from delicate brushwork all the way up to manic snare drum solos. As a drummer, it really was heaven to hear. Wrapping things up, 13 is an entertaining game, with a fully realised aesthetic, compelling narrative, and plenty of other interesting things going on, although it is now showing its age in places. My favourite levels mostly appeared in the second half of the game, with the standout being the submarine escape sequence, which evokes the peak parts of the N64 classics GoldenEye and Perfect Dark. I'd say that if you're a fan of games that aim for a twist on a familiar genre, you like FPSs in the first place, and you can overlook some of the ropey elements, or you're like me and you're so deeply entrenched in early 2000s video games that you barely notice them, if most of those things are true, then you'll definitely have fun, and I'd highly recommend giving it a go. Now, let's have some more of that soundtrack.